Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns have more losses than wins and more questions than answers after 3 games. They can't protect Deshaun Watson, have too many injuries on the offensive line, and Myles Garrett is dealing with painful injuries to both feet. Here to discuss the mess, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. Hey, Chud.
Hey, Scott, I guess in the NFL, you never know, right? I mean, it looks like the Giants wanted it more and they came into town. And that's why, especially right now in the NFL, it's so hard to predict these games because you just don't know what's going to happen. And I don't want to use that overused phrase any given Sunday because I never really bought into that too much. But boy, now it's like, it's true. I mean, you're seeing things happen around the NFL, minus a couple teams like the Chiefs, for example. It seems like anyone can be beat at any time, at any place.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I'm with you. I always resisted any given Sunday because I just thought it was overused. But there is reality to it. And I think unless you are one of the dominant teams or one of the really poor teams, but even that, we saw Carolina switch quarterbacks and then go out and beat the Raiders. But unless you're playing like Buffalo's playing, or how the Chiefs have played pretty much every year since Patrick Mahomes has been there, it comes down to how you play on that week and how matchups work. And if one guy takes over a game, or if you can protect the quarterback. And obviously, I'm thinking of all these things in the lens of the Browns. But when you looked at this Giants matchup, and I do these 3 things to watch every week. One of them was I thought Daniel Jones is a runner. The Browns had to be careful about that, and he didn't really do anything in that realm. Then it was Malik Neighbors, the rookie receiver. Can they stop him? And they didn't. And can they protect the quarterback against a good Giants pass rush? And they didn't do that either. And that's how the Browns lost this game, right? That's the recipe. And they shouldn't have lost. I think they're more talented than the Giants, yada, yada. But there's a recipe out there or a blueprint out there for pretty much any team to beat another team on, for whatever matchup that is. And if it doesn't go your way and you don't play well or you make some pivotal mistakes, that's how wins turn into losses. And we've seen it across the league, and we see it with the Browns. And when you see it, all the flaws that the team has come shooting to the forefront. And I felt like that's what we saw Sunday against the Giants.
Yeah, and you just hit some major points there. I mean, your crystal ball was right on with how they could lose, and that's exactly what happened. And we're gonna break into all that here. A costly penalty, which in my opinion changed the entire direction of the game. We talked about Deshaun Watson's play. The offensive line certainly in the top 2 or 3 reasons they lost. And we'll get into their inability to cover Neighbors, which, that was huge. But those are all little things that we'll dissect within the game, right? Within the 3-hour period or whatever on Sunday. But when you look at it in the cover of the book and, and what it's titled, would the title of this book be They Out Game Planned Us? They Wanted It More. They caught us off guard kind of type thing. I mean,
Yeah.
is that kind of what happened, do you think?
Well, I think a couple of those things, yes. The wanted it more, I struggle with that one. I think it's hard to judge effort sometimes. And I didn't, I'm watching the game, I'm watching the play. I rewatched it yesterday. I didn't see a lack of effort. Now, you can talk about desperation, and I think desperation matters in the NFL. And the Giants were desperate because they were 0-2. People are talking about Coach Brian Daboll being on the hot seat. The quarterback, Daniel Jones, is getting killed. You don't know about his future with the team, all those things. So the Giants felt more desperate because for all those reasons I just mentioned. And the Browns had just come off a win. They're 1-1. It didn't feel like a must win, quote unquote must win. So I'll give you that desperate part of it. But I didn't think the Browns came out with any kind of lack of effort. Now, the game plan and the caught by surprise, that's a different story. And Deshaun Watson came out after the game and said it. They did not expect the Giants to blitz the way they did. And the Giants defensive coordinator was Mike Vrabel's defensive coordinator in Tennessee. And Watson expected them to play a lot of the defense that Tennessee has played in the past. And that's off coverage and not a lot of blitzing. And that's how the Giants opened the season. Their first two games, I think I saw a stat they blitzed 27% of the time. Against the Browns, it was 50+%. And that caught especially Deshaun Watson off guard. Now, Kevin Stefanski said, hey, when you see it early, okay, you never know what's going to happen. It's week 3. You see it early, and you go, okay, they're going to stick with this, and you have to adjust. The problem is the Browns didn't adjust well enough. I'm writing a column right now, an analysis, a part of that, the whole Deshaun Watson factor in it. And I think he needs to be better recognizing the blitzes and putting his line in his tight ends and running backs in a better position to pick up those blitzes. I think it starts with the quarterback. Having said that, even when they had enough guys to block the pass rushers, the protection was getting beat. There's one play, I think it was the second sack of the game. Giants rushed 6 guys, running back Dante Foreman, right tackle DeJuan Jones, and center Ethan Posick all get beat. And, so what's Deshaun Watson supposed to do there? Even if they identified it, he had guys blocking each guy, 3 guys get beat, you're going to get sacked. So I do think there was an element of surprise. I don't think that was the only reason they lost the game. I think they figured it out or they made the adjustments, but yet even when they made the adjustments, they still struggled to protect Watson. And that, to me, that was the biggest part of this game. And there's a million factors there, and it's Watson's a factor, and DeJuan Jones not being able to move is a factor, and the injuries on the O-line are a factor. But 8 sacks, 17 hits, it's really tough to win that game that way. Now, they still had chances, but that to me is like the headline of the game.
Yeah. Well, and you're right, coming into the game, and I mean, getting the fumble and touchdown on the first 2 plays, I mean, clearly there wasn't a lack of aggression by the Browns there. So I don't think it was maybe going into the game wanting it more. Maybe it was just the Browns took the Giants threw so many punches at them. I guess what's amazing though is I talked this out, is that with as bad as it was, they had a chance to steal this game and take it. I mean, they could have won this game even with how bad things went.
Yes, and I think part of that speaks to the defense playing much better in the second half. If you give 21 points in the first half, nothing in the second half. So that's part of it. The defense gave them a chance to come back. They get that 1 touchdown drive, and then all of a sudden you're within 6 points. Right? They convert the 2-point conversion. Then they get the ball 3 times in the last, I want to say, 10 minutes with a chance to take the lead. And Jerome Ford can't hang on to a handoff. And it looked like the handoff was high, but it felt like, and I've never taken a handoff, but it felt like Ford should have been able to hold on to the ball. Watson did not take any responsibility, made it sound like it was Ford's fault. He handed the ball to him, and Ford's got to hold on to it. Regardless, that ends one drive. Then you get 3rd and 1, and Jameis Winston comes in for the sneak and gets blown up. Does a heck of a job fighting back to the line of scrimmage. Then on 4th and 1, Watson has Jordan Akins open in the right flat for an easy first down conversion and doesn't throw the ball. And he was looking for Jerry Jeudy. It's a run-pass option. He sees the linebacker go with Ford on the handoff, so it's okay, I'm going to throw behind it. Jerry Jeudy's running a slant. The Giants guy comes over, the second Giants defender comes over. It's like a double team of Jeudy by mistake. They kind of collide. So Judy's not there. So it's a right decision not to throw to Jeudy, but right next to him is Jordan Akins in the flat, and he's open because the second defender got caught up with Jeudy. I think Watson needs to recognize that. He needs to throw it, and he doesn't. He tucks it, tries to scramble, is a couple inches short of the first down. So there's one possession that gets away from you. And I'm kind of writing this column about, or this analysis about Watson and how he's tough to evaluate. through these first 3 games because he's not getting a lot of help, because, he's getting the snot kicked out of him from a protection standpoint. But you need him to make big plays like that, and you need him to see the field clearly, and that was an example of when he didn't do that. So that's your second chance wasted. And then the third one, Watson makes a good throw on 4th and 5 into tight coverage, and Cedric Tillman drops the ball. So that's not Watson's fault, but that's a total team failure there. They had 3 different guys on big plays in the last 3 possessions fail the Browns. And you put all that together, that's how you lose when you're a touchdown favorite.
Yeah, so many directions to go here, but staying on the Watson theme, it's incredible, that touchdown to Amari Cooper. And I had a feeling Cooper was gonna break out in this game, Scott, after the first 2 games. You just kind of felt it coming. I was excited to see that. What a great touchdown to start out the game. And Watson made some really nice throws and gets him back for another touchdown, gets the 2-point conversion. But then, overthrows Cooper on that one, had some other misses, some poor decisions. Ultimately, yeah, you can't blame him for a drop pass there at the end. You're right, man. That's a good column to write, because I walked away being very conflicted. And listen, the Boo Birds were out. I went to the game as a fan, something that I've only done, I think, 2 times in the last 25, 30 years. I mean, it doesn't happen often. I took my girls, my family to the game, so I was there in person. And, I walked away. There was a lot of boos, a lot of chants for Jameis Winston. And, my wife was asking me, do you think that, that Stefanski would make that change? But that's how fans are feeling. I know that's how it usually works. The backup's always the most popular guy in town when a guy's struggling. But how do you walk away? How should Browns fans feel about Deshaun Watson right now after 3 games?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm trying to get to in this analysis I'm writing. And it's tough, Chud, because he hasn't been good enough. And if he played better, I think they have at least one more win. That Dallas game was tough to, there were a bunch of issues there, obviously. I didn't think he played well that game. I thought he played better against the Jaguars, made quicker decisions. And I thought he was hit or miss against the Giants. So that's why it's hard, because, he's not playing at an elite level. There's no doubt about that. The question is he playing well enough that this team can win games? And I just don't have a good answer for that. If a couple of plays go differently against the Giants, whether it's him or someone else, they could have won that game. But it is a quarterback. He's charged with making those big plays when it counts. And that includes that 4th and 1 that I talked about. It includes he has Elijah Moore in the 3rd quarter running down the seam wide open. And I don't know if there was miscommunication. He thought Moore was going to run his route a little differently, but it looked like the throw wasn't close. Looked like it was just a bad throw to me. Now, again, I don't know the exact read there. I don't know if Moore should have been it wider, but it felt like Watson just missed a throw. And there's a couple other throws where he just threw it out of bounds or made a difficult throw or hangs out of the ball too long, right? All those things that keep cropping up. Is he seeing the field well enough, hanging on to the ball too long, slow to make the decisions? Those are still issues with him. That doesn't mean he can't get better. That doesn't mean they can't win games. What I think it means is this defense better dominate, and it hasn't done that yet. And, it did for a big chunk of that Jacksonville game. But I don't like where the offense is, and it's not just Deshaun Watson, it's where the offense is in general. The defense is going to have to dominate because the offense isn't where it needs to be. I don't know why we would think that the protection's going to get much better when Wyatt Teller's out for multiple Greeks. We don't know the status of Jed Wills, Jack Conklin, James Hudson III, or even DeJuan Jones. Your top 4 tackles are all dealing with something. So there's other issues. But to get back to the Watson thing, it's really hard for me to evaluate. And part of that is because he's getting the snot kicked out of him. And it's hard for any quarterback to play like that. getting sacked 8 times, hit 17 times. So I want to give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt while saying his overall performance hasn't been good enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and let me make more sense out of it. If you're a fan, and even if you're in the building in Berea, with the money they spent on him and the draft picks they gave up for him, this is not how it was supposed to play out. So that's why fans feel the way they did. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, with the expectations of what this guy was supposed to be, along with all the baggage off the field that he brought, that's the issue. You know, I understand the offensive line is banged up, but let's put this game aside. Everything we've seen so far out of him, the majority has not been great.
No, that's a great point. In what it leads me to say is, when you pay a quarterback that much money, you expect him to elevate everyone around him. You expect him to go win games kind of by himself, right? I mean, that's an exaggeration. Where we are right now is Watson needs a whole lot of stuff to go right around him to be successful. And that's not what you pay $230 million for. So that's where the disconnect is. That's why fans are so frustrated, because he shouldn't need every player to catch every ball he throws, protection to be perfect, right? All those things. It just shouldn't need to be like that. But that's where we are. That's where he is. And the organization has done everything it can to support him on the field, off the field, get him, and we can talk about whether or not the talent around him is good enough, but they've tried to give him as much talent as possible. They tried to shift the offensive scheme and system and philosophy to better suit his needs or better suit his skill set, and it still isn't there, right? He's still not playing like a Pro Bowler or even a top 15 quarterback in the league.
Yeah. Well, we both picked the Browns to win. You had a little more confidence than I did. But, Scott, that leads me to how I felt during the game. There's so many times as a Cleveland fan, you're like, oh, the shoe's going to drop. We're going to lose this game. Scott, I thought they were going to come back to win. I really did. And They had all of those opportunities, like you mentioned. They get the touchdown. Then they go for 2, which is, wow. I mean, that was – I get the analytics, but that was, wow, okay. They went for 2 and they got it. So all of a sudden you get the 2 and you're like, they score another touchdown. They win on the extra point. This is brilliant. They're going to make up for everything they did wrong with the winning touchdown, and they're going to win this game. But it just didn't happen because of those mistakes at the end.
Yeah, you're right. And it felt like they would have stole a game, and we would have been right. And we would have been talking about, the defense gave them a chance to come back, right? All those narratives that change from a win to a loss. But if you're a fan, I think that just makes it even more frustrating that as poorly as they played, they were right there and had the chance to win, and instead they lose to a team that was 0-2. They lose to a quarterback that's not very good. So and now you question everything, and that's how the NFL works, right? You win one game and everybody thinks everything's fine, but I think this is how fans feel. Is all of a sudden you're 1-2, you don't know how to feel about anything. The trip to Las Vegas, how's that going to turn out? Then you go to Washington. Oh my gosh, you just saw Washington go into Cincinnati and not punt. And, Daniels looks fantastic as a rookie quarterback. And all of a sudden, everything that you thought you knew about this team is questionable. And your best player, Myles Garrett, is limping like crazy and having MRIs. And again, all this stuff can be flipped Sunday if they go into Vegas, play great, Myles looks healthier, whatever. But right now, it feels like, how is this going to possibly be fixed? Is it only going to get worse? And I'm not ready to make that kind of leap, but I understand how people could think that, given how Sunday went, given how the first 2 games went. And the offense hasn't scored 20 points, and Deshaun Watson hasn't thrown for 200 yards.
Yeah. And to think, too, I mean, man, penalties, we talked about it last week. Scott, if they get that interception and there's not a penalty there, they could go in and score, and then the Giants play the entire game differently because now they're, maybe in a little panic mode, down maybe 2 touchdowns. What a dip. That play changed the entire game, in my opinion. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, they did a better job overall. They 5 penalties, 48 yards, which is a big decline after they'd averaged 12 for their first 2 games. But you're right, Chud, and I don't know how big a believer I am in the whole butterfly effect, but that was a huge play, and there's no denying it was a turning point. I don't know if the game plays out completely differently if Greg Newsome II doesn't get called for roughing the passer in the first quarter. Maybe Watson throws an interception and it washes itself out, right? But it certainly felt like, because Ronnie Hickman gets the interception at the Giants' 24-yard line. The Browns have all the momentum in the world. The Giants haven't done anything to that point. They go in and score. They either go up 10 or 14. And now you're asking Daniel Jones, if you're Brian Daboll, to go win you the game, which he doesn't do well. And you put all the pressure on him. And if you're Jim Schwartz, you can attack defensively. And maybe all those play calls that kept the defense off balance early, the screens and the jet sweeps, in the swing passes, maybe those aren't effective if you're up by 14, right? Jim Schwartz can call the game differently. So, yeah, so that there's no doubt that play was a huge call. I think it was the right call. Kevin Stefanski said it was the right call. So if the coach says it, it's the right call. Newsome didn't need to do that. He jumps, his hands come down, and he hits Daniel Jones in the helmet. You can't hit a quarterback in the helmet, period. And it wasn't egregious, right? It wasn't like he lit him up, but you can see on the replay, Jones' head moves back, and that's what the official sees. The call gets made. I think it's the right call. The Giants stay on the Giants keep the ball, go on a long touchdown drive. They convert a 4th and 1, I want to say. Newsome misses a tackle on a 3rd down that could have gotten him off the field. It was a terrible drive for Greg Newsome. So, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to say completely that if Newsome doesn't get that penalty, the Browns win the game, but it's without a doubt a turning point, and I'm fine if someone wants to say yes, that the Browns win if Newsome doesn't get that call, doesn't get that penalty.
Well, I'll tell you what, those guys, they obviously don't get the turnover, but my daughters enjoyed the celebration in the end zone. They did quite the job on that, right?
Well, yeah, and I, you know what? There's a million things going on. I didn't see it, and then I saw it later, and it was a marching band, right? Like, it was a great celebration, but you have to know. Somebody's got to know, and Greg Newsome has to know. He has to know he hit him in the head. He probably sees a flag. You can't run over there. It just looks ridiculous. And I get it. I get the celebration. That's what the league does. Jim Schwartz wants him to celebrate, but you can't celebrate when the play's coming back. It is fun as I think that celebration.
Well, to stay on the turnover team, obviously that turnover would have changed the game. We just talked about it. But let's go back to Watson and those last 3 drives. And, 2 turnovers on those drives. And, again, we're not blaming him on that drop ball by Tillman. But, this city – basically, we took Baker Mayfield out of town because he could not get it done. He could never win a game on the final drive. I mean, that's what we saw with Watson. He had so many chances there, Scott, for whatever reason. I know we've broken them all down, but that was on a silver platter for him to really – that could have been a big moment for him, and he didn't get it done.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I personally am okay with giving quarterbacks win-loss records. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of analytics people that disagree with that, and because it's such a team game and it's not just the quarterback. You're right. You could throw for 500 yards and still lose. I get that. I still think it's okay to give quarterback to judge quarterbacks, at least to some degree, on win-loss record. And Deshaun Watson lost to Daniel Jones. And again, is that completely fair? No. But he had chances to win that game, like you just talked about. He had chances to make more plays, and he didn't. And the defense only gave up 21 points. So there's nothing that says Deshaun Watson and company can't go score 22. And that's why I will give him some blame. He had a big strip sack. Now, DeJuan Jones got beat, but should Should Watson have seen that coming? I don't know. And that's again, I don't want to blame him for things he shouldn't be blamed for. But the strip sack at the end of the first half led to 7 Giants points that were huge. 40 seconds left in the half. Maybe if Watson protects the ball better, maybe if he sees the pressure coming from his front side, he doesn't, he gets the ball out quicker, doesn't get hit as he throws. Again, maybe not completely fair, but they didn't win. He didn't beat Daniel Jones, and he's going to go play Gardner Minshew in Las Vegas on Sunday. And that feels like a matchup where the Browns should have a decided advantage. And the way Watson is playing right now, that's not true. That there's not a whole lot of quarterback matchups where you walk in and go, man, I feel much better about the Browns than the opponent. And that's a guy, Gardner Minshew, who might get benched in Las Vegas. They were talking about it yesterday. So I maybe that encapsulates kind of where this offense is and where specifically Deshaun Watson is at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say one thing, though. It was very nice of you to lend Deshaun his outfit after the game for the post-game interview there. That nice green shirt and hat, that was nice of you.
Yeah, we could go on for about 15 minutes on that one too, Chud. I don't own that hat. I don't know if it's velour, I don't know what, velvet, whatever the fabric of that shirt was. I don't know if I give him credit for wearing that despite a loss, or I think he should have just changed into like brown sweatpants and sweatshirt, because he certainly calls attention to himself with that outfit. And he took a bunch of grief, at least on my X timeline, for wearing what he wore.
Did he? I didn't even look into it. I just couldn't even take the time. But were people talking about it post game?
Yeah, I mean, it showed up, and like I post some videos, and people were making comments about the hat for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about just amongst the media? I mean, or it was
yeah.
I guess yeah.
It was more okay. It reminded me of when Myles Garrett dresses up for Halloween, and then they lose, and then you got to wear like the Halloween costume out of the stadium, like. And I know you don't want to bring a lost outfit, because that's a bad energy. If we lose, I can't wear this. But maybe you can pivot when you do lose. I'm sure the Browns equipment people have clothes that you can wear out of the stadium.
Yeah, I agree. That's funny because I really did not research or look on the X whatever timelines and things, but that's funny people were talking about. I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
not surprised at all. All right, what direction we want to go? There's so many ways. Let's hit the defense real quick. You've pretty much broken it down, but I'm gonna take another. And not that I take pride in this, Scott, but again, if you want to be an elite defense, and I get that they did well in the second half, I get that. All right, but really, I get Neighbors is a rookie. This guy's going to be a phenomenal receiver. We got a firsthand taste of what this guy is going to be, but they just let this guy. He owned the Browns defense in the first half. I mean, really, you stop him. We're talking about Daniel Jones, and they don't have Saquon Barkley anymore. I mean, that just very disappointing to see them just go up and down and get those touchdowns on the Browns defense in the first half.
No question about it. And I think this defense can be elite, and it hasn't played like that yet. Maybe Jacksonville, but Jacksonville's got its own issues. You can't allow a 13-yard drive or 13-play, 81-yard drive, and then a 14-play, 93-yard drive. That's what happened in the first half. The Browns defense can't let that happen to anybody. Can't let it happen to Daniel Jones specifically. And I thought Brian Daboll, the coach and play caller, did an outstanding job calling plays and had the Browns off balance and took advantage of their aggression and all those things. You still can't let it happen twice if you want to be the dominant defense that the Browns think they can be. And Neighbors was the worst of that, and it was catching passes against Martin Emerson Jr. It was jet sweeps that worked, and he's an outstanding talent, and he went out and made great plays. That touchdown when he got The second foot down right before his hand hit was unbelievable. The 28-yard play before that where he goes up and it looks like Martin Emerson Jr. is going to have an interception. I mean, Emerson was in the perfect position. He had Neighbors on his back, pinned against the sideline. The ball's in Emerson's hands, and Neighbors goes up and takes it away. And I think Emerson, for whatever reason, couldn't get off the ground, like couldn't jump like he needed to. But that's a play he's got to make. He's in perfect position. Neighbors goes and steals one from him, and that changes the game too. That's led to it. That was a touchdown drive. So the Browns had their opportunities. What I'll say is, I question not having Denzel Ward on Neighbors earlier in the game more often. And I know the Browns play a lot of left side, right side, but and Emerson admitted, and Emerson is a really good corner. The Browns have incredibly high hopes for him. I don't think he's played up to his ability in these first 3 games. I thought that was painfully obvious against Neighbors. And Emerson said after the game, they came after me. And he was not able to shut down Neighbors. And it was a play along the sideline. It was the touchdown. I mean, Neighbors made a great catch on that touchdown, but he was wide open. Jones just didn't make a great throw because he made Emerson look silly on an in-and-out move. So I think the Browns, maybe they just trusted Emerson too much. Maybe that's what it comes down to. But they left him one-on-one with Neighbors, and they paid the price.
Well, there's where you can say coaching can help win or lose a game immensely, because we go back to the beginning where you talked about how Deshaun Watson didn't think they were going to blitz as much, and the coaching staff had designed a different plan than what they did the first 2 games and what he did back at Tennessee. They did something different the Browns weren't expecting. And on the other side, the Browns go with what they typically do, and maybe they should have just isolated Ward on him, and that could have been a difference maker, and we're talking about a different result. So that's where coaching plays in big time.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And, you know, I understand if you want to trust your guy and you think that Emerson's that good. And it felt like they went to Ward more on Neighbors in the second half, and Neighbors didn't do nearly as well. He had 6 for 78 in the first half, and he finished with 8 for 78. Right, so they did a much better job on him in the second half. But yeah, maybe they just didn't appreciate how good Neighbors was. And it's only his 3rd game. There's only 2 games of film on him. He looked really good the week before, but you know, again, maybe it's just too much trust in Emerson. But that's how they lost the game, is because that guy, his Neighbors, dominated the first half. And I think if you put Ward on him more, he doesn't dominate. And again, that's one of those things that could change the outcome. You're 100% right.
Yeah, no question. Sticking on the defense and injury theme, Myles Garrett, how we looking with him? I mean, we got both feet injured, Scott, and how's the future looking for him?
Yeah, it's an unknown, Chud. I do think the Browns got good news Monday. He had an MRI, and Kevin Stefanski wouldn't say what the MRI was on. It was both feet, it was both legs, because then Myles says that the feet cause him to compensate, so other parts of his body are hurting. He didn't call them injuries, he called them ailments. But the fact is, his lower body is giving him all kinds of trouble right now. And we saw it during the game. Medical tent twice. He stayed down. He needed help getting off the field in the 4th quarter. And he came back from all of it. And I thought he played at a high level. Didn't have any sacks, but 3 quarterback hits, a bunch of pressures, drew a holding penalty, which is rare because he hasn't been getting those calls, but he got one finally on Sunday. So he has the MRI, and Stefanski pronounces him day-to-day. Well, if an MRI showed whatever, a broken foot or whatever they're looking for in the MRI, then they might have to shut Myles down. So for Kevin Stefanski to say day-to-day, I think Myles is going to continue to play. And Myles has said that. Unless somebody tells me I can't play, I'm going to play. And he's proved that, Chud. For all the grief that Myles Garrett used to get, and that's subsided greatly with the NFL Defensive Player of the Year award he won last year. Since his rookie year, and he had an ankle injury early in his rookie year, he had a concussion later in the rookie year. Since the start of 2018, which was the second season, he's missed one game for an injury. Now, he missed a couple for COVID, but he missed one game for an injury, and that was after he rolled his car and missed that Atlanta game, and then he came back and played the rest of the season despite several injuries that lingered from the car accident. My point is, he is a gamer. His teammates call him a warrior. He's a tough dude, and he's going to continue to play because that's who he is. So I expect him to play. I don't know how effective he'll be. I doubt he practices much this week, but I think there's any way possible he's going to play. And the hope is that the ailments continue to improve as the season goes on, as you try to get him some rest. That's the goal. But I think he's going to keep playing, Chud, because that's who he is.
You had mentioned all the offensive line injuries earlier. Most Browns fans know what's going on there. I want you to dig deeper, though. I'm not saying that the injuries are happening because of this, but how much are we seeing the loss of Bill Callahan play into the factor of the offensive line mess that we are watching right now?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to a loyal listener and a colleague, Nate Ulrich of the Akron Beacon Journal. We've been talking about this for weeks, if not longer, and we were texting about it again yesterday. Bill Callahan not being here is a factor. And it was a factor because he was really good when the Browns would be shorthanded. We saw it last year. They were without their starting tackles, and he figured out a way to win games and get protection with backups. He's really good at that, and that is needed now when the Browns have all these injuries. He had such a big role in designing the protection plans during the week and the run game plans that I think they miss him there. And I think the blitz pickups, I think there's a direct correlation there between not having Bill Callahan and the issues the Browns are having, recognizing and picking up blitzes. Having said all that, so I'm not going to say he has there's no factor, there's no correlation. Because when you have who you think is the best offensive line coach in the league and he leaves, there's going to be a drop-off. Having said all that, I don't think he's the only reason the offensive line is having issues. I think they have smart coaches in Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey and Andy Dickerson and Deuce Staley, the running backs coach. They have Mike Vrabel. Like, they have enough guys where they should be able to figure this out without Bill Callahan. And there's 31 other teams in the league that don't have Bill Callahan as their line coach. And their lines are able to block people. And the Chiefs win Super Bowls without Bill Callahan. And teams go to the playoffs without Bill Callahan. So as good as he is and as important as he was, I don't want to diminish that at all. But I want to say that shouldn't be any kind of excuse. And they still have capable coaches and capable linemen. So I don't want to give it as much blame as some people do, but I don't want to give it no credence at all.
Yeah. That's a good answer. I like that. You obviously have been thinking about it.
I have. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get close here to the end. A couple things I want to hand real quick, though. Just how are we health-wise on the line? I mean, are we going to get guys back this Sunday? Where do we stand?
I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, okay.
Keller's out. He's a candidate to go on IR. We're taping this Tuesday morning. That might happen Tuesday afternoon. We'll have to see if he goes on IR or not. And then you got Hudson, Conklin, Wills, Jones. They're all dealing with something. I would expect you'll have at least two of those guys available Sunday, but I can't say that for sure. There were MRIs. Kevin Stefanski didn't have the results. Wills was standing on the sideline at the end, so he could have gone back in. That's a good sign, but it was the same knee that he had surgery on, so that's a concern. DeJuan Jones, he wasn't even questionable. They knew he was going to play. Yes, he was dealing with the knee. He just looked like he couldn't move. And you want to think that that's the knee and that's just not him not being able to move. But guys are going around him with too much ease. So they got to figure that out. I don't know if it means you go with Jermaine Ifedi for a week at one of the tackle spots, if you got to go outside your roster to get a guy, that will bear watching the rest of the week.
If they had won this game, we would have already talked about this. I did mention him earlier at the beginning, and that I was not surprised to see him bounce back. But Amari Cooper looked fantastic.
I completely agree. I thought he would. We talked to him Wednesday, and he just looked and sounded different. I thought he was going to have a good game. He had a really good game. His body control on the sideline and in the end zone is unbelievable. And I think we'll continue to see this Amari Cooper. I think he's out of the funk, slump busted, and they need him. I mean, they need as much help on offense as they can get. Amari Cooper playing like Amari Cooper is a huge step in that direction.
And Scott, I gotta throw this out there because I was a little disappointed as I mentioned going as a fan to the game. A lot of empty seats and a lot of Giants fans there. And they were kind of loud there towards the end.
Yeah, and that happens when, the game's decided and your fans are quiet and leave. And it happened against the Cowboys, and it's happened too many times against the Steelers. But yeah, it's, and that's rough when you're the home team and you're the coach and you're the players and you hear that on your way off the field. So yeah, and about the empty seats, I didn't notice, Chud. I know you told me that. Yeah, that's interesting. It's such a gorgeous weather day. You would think the place would be packed. And then I did notice some Giants fans when I was driving into the stadium, more than I expected. I guess it's New York. There's a lot of New York people everywhere. There's a lot of New Yorkers, period. But yeah, it's, to me, this just plays into they're 0-2 at home. They were 8-1 last year at home. Now they're 0-2, and they've lost whatever magic, whatever mystique they had.
Yeah, 8-1 last year. I mean, these home games are like bars of gold. We talk Browns all year long, and and I know, believe me, like when they weren't winning there and all those lean years, and when it's freezing cold out, I get it. It's tough to pack the place, but you just like. There's not going to be empty seats in Green Bay. There's not going to be empty seats in Pittsburgh. Like I want to make sure that we're always up there in the top as the best fans in the land. And it was kind of disappointing to see that many empty seats.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Nothing to go off on a tangent too much. But all right, I think it's time to move on to this week, unless you have anything more that you want to hit from that debacle.
No, we covered everything I had on my list here.
All right, so real quick before we make a prediction, the Raiders in an interesting situation. They are having a QB situation, right? And they have a Devontae Adams situation, and they're coming off a loss to the Panthers. What am I missing?
Yeah, I mean, it just speaks to the craziness of the league, like we talked about earlier. They go into Baltimore and come back in the fourth quarter and beat Baltimore in week 2. Then they go home and lose to the, previously pitiful Panthers. Now, I know the Panthers made a quarterback change, but they were just embarrassed by the Panthers. So they're dealing with stuff. I mean, their coach, Antonio Pierce, at the end of the game, after the game said, he was asked about the effort. And he said, we had guys at the end making business decisions, and now we're going to have to make business decisions. I mean, that's a bold quote, calling out your guys, calling out their effort. And as of Monday, he hadn't said what changes are going to be made, like from a, lineup perspective, but he wasn't happy. He's a fiery coach. I think he was considering making a quarterback change from Minshew to O'Connell, but according to report citing sources last night, he's sticking with Minshew, who lit up the Browns last year with the Colts in that great game that the Browns won in Indy. Minshew had a huge game against the Browns. Their best pass rusher, Max Crosby, who's fantastic, has a high ankle sprain. He's playing through it, so maybe that evens things out. Myles Garrett's got his feet issue. Crosby has a high ankle. He did not look the same against the Panthers. I watched that. He is phenomenal, and he just didn't have the same burst. in that game. So, if you're looking for a break for the Browns, that's a break. I think they're one of their key safeties. Epps is out. He got hurt. So, yeah, they're in a little bit of a shambles too, Chud. So it's a couple of teams desperate for a win, a couple of teams with a bunch of issues, bunch of injury issues, quarterback issues. So it's going to be interesting. I expect to see a bunch of Browns fans in Vegas. I mean, I know a bunch of people going myself. So it's going to be interesting to see what the atmosphere is in that stadium. And I think the Browns are 1-point underdogs right now. I thought I saw them open maybe as favorites. Anyway, it's close to a pick'em game, and I think that just shows you where these two teams are.
Yeah, I noticed they were favored by 1. Now it's the Raiders. I think you're right about that. All right. Well, what's interesting, and again, we talked about some of the empty seats. Believe me, I do think we have the best fans in the NFL, and that will show up. They will be loud on the road next week, and that's a place where the visiting fans usually do have. I mean, right? Those games out in Vegas, you have so many fans of the other team, so there's going to be a ton of Browns fans.
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah, I mean, that's a place where it's a destination spot for opposing fans. There isn't the built-in fan base in Vegas, right? Because they've only been there a few years, so you don't have, a million. You don't have the dyed-in-the-wool Raiders fans from Vegas. They probably still come from California to some degree, but yeah, it is a place where opposing teams can take over. And I got softball guys on my softball team going. The woman that cuts my hair is going. There's a lot of people going to this game from Cleveland, so it could be a majority of Browns fans. I wouldn't be surprised to hear that at all.
Scott, I when you said you had softball buddies going, I was like, yeah, okay. But when you threw out the woman that cuts my hair, I was not looking for that.
Yeah, honestly,
okay.
Yeah. Keep going.
All right, give her a cheap plug here, and then you can get a free haircut.
Yeah, there you go. I'll have to tell her. Jenny from Supercuts. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. All right. All right. Boy, we're not doing too well here on prediction time. I'm guessing most people in the city aren't, but man, Browns are 1-2. They need this win here. So I think I went first last week.
You did. So I'll go first this time. Yeah, I mean, I was confident last week, Chud. I was way wrong. So I'm less confident this week. But I'm going to pick the Browns because I watched the Raiders-Panthers game, like I mentioned. I watched it last night, and the Raiders were bad. The Panthers ran on them. They threw on them. They can't protect the quarterback. I think this sets up for a Browns win, a Browns bounce back. Now, if the Browns don't have any tackles, that could change things. But I think they figure it out like they did in Jacksonville. I think we'll see probably more of a run-heavy game plan like we saw in Jacksonville, which helps the offensive line. It helps the quarterback, all those things. So I just think they're better than the Raiders, and I'm going to pick them. Maybe the defense gets a touchdown this week to help the offense out. So give me Browns 20, Raiders 17.
20-17, Petrak on the board. Yeah. It just makes you wonder how the Raiders won in Baltimore, right?
It does. It does. And, I watched a game last night too, and the Ravens were moving the ball, and then they stopped. And then all of a sudden, the Raiders figured out a way to get, I think it was 13 points in the fourth quarter. It's not saying the Raiders have some talent. You mentioned Adams at receiver. Minshew can get hot. Minshew is like a hot and cold quarterback. He can make great throws, then he makes terrible decisions and bad throws. So he can get hot and lead a couple of drives there. But the Ravens are way better team. I don't know how, and I watched it. I still don't know how they let that one get away from them.
Wild.
Yep.
Well, yeah, Scott, boy, they make it hard on us, don't they? Making these predictions. Last week I said that I did not think they would win all three of these next three games, meaning Giants, Raiders, and Commanders. I just when it looks like when it's too good to be true, or it looks like they should, they're going to stumble in one of the three. I just didn't think it was going to be against the Giants at home, right? So now, in my opinion, I'm going to tell you, I think these next two games are must win, and it's not going to be easy after watching Washington last night, 3 in a row on the road. Then you got the Eagles. With the schedule that they have ahead, I mean, you got to win these next two games. I'm almost saying must wins. I think, and I'm going to pick the Browns. I'm going to go along with you because I think that Stefanski's got to have him in a position to win this game. We know he's good coming off losses. I think they're going to bounce back. No guarantees, right? My score will show you that, but I'm going to go, that 1 point line kind of back and forth. I'm going to go Browns. This is a great score. Browns 19, Raiders 18. All right. So I don't know how it happens, but it's a 1 point win, 19-18, and they get back to 2-2. And then I'll probably pick them to beat Washington then and get back to 3-2. Now, if I'm wrong and you're wrong and they lose to the Raiders, I might not pick the Browns again for a long, long time.
Right. Yeah, Chud, that's funny. I almost went with a score like that. Like I had 19-18 in my head. I had 20-19 in my head. And then I just went through the more conventional 2017. But that's funny. And you're right. And I think we probably said it earlier, but I'll say it again. It just shows how things shifted. We thought this was the easiest part of the schedule, and it probably is the easiest part of the schedule, but there's nothing easy about it anymore. Everything's become hard. Everything's a grind with how this team is playing right now, and they got to grind out some wins, and however possible, whatever way possible, they have to do it because they need to pile up some wins, and this has to be one of them. Again, can't call it a must win. It's way too early in the season, but they need this win. There's no doubt about it. And then they need to figure out what's wrong. And they know what's wrong. They need to fix what's wrong. And it starts by getting this win in Las Vegas.
Yeah, good point. How about the AFC North right now? I mean, the Steelers 3-0, the Ravens 1-2, the Browns 1-2. And how about the Bengals 0-3 after losing on Monday Night Football?
I know. I think the Ravens are still the betting favorite, even being behind Pittsburgh by 2 games. I don't feel so good about my prediction that 3 AFC North teams make the playoffs. I think I said that at some point. In the Bengals, their defense was so bad last night. And I know Daniels is great and the Commanders are great offensively, but that Bengals defense is bad. So a lot of things to clean up in this division. There's no doubt about it. And the Steelers have plenty of issues and they keep winning games. So maybe that's the blueprint the Browns need to follow.
Boy, Hard Knocks. Well, it's a Hard Knocks jinx or something.
You're right about that. I forgot about that, Chud. Yeah, they're coming in December.
Yeah, well, by then maybe things will be turned around. But you never know. You make a good point about how this is why we never play the schedule game in the offseason. The Bengals might turn out to be games, and I know this is crazy because, I mean, it's never easy against divisional opponents. But, if things continue to spiral for them, maybe those Bengals games then won't look as difficult as you would have thought before the season. That said, the Bengals always start slow, and I would imagine they'll pick it up. But we'll see.
Yeah,
maybe they won't.
Right. Yeah, you just don't know. I mean, that's who we are. You just don't know, and it makes it hard to predict. It makes it hard to analyze. But it comes down to how you play on that game, like during that game, right? There's a handful of plays, and it's overall preparation, game plan, all the things we talked about. But all that, like, it can change from week to week, especially when you're not an elite team. And I'm just rehashing what we talked about at the beginning. But that's what we've learned. Right? We've learned it's week to week. You better show up. You better play well, and you need your quarterback to play well. And all those things are question marks with this team right now.
You better not pout. I'm telling you why. All right, that's it for me, Scott. Time for me to go get a nap, and I'll see you the rest of the week on in the mornings on Go. Cheap plug, and you'll be busy writing articles and going to practice and helping the Browns fix their mess.
I'm going to try. Well, I don't know about help them fix the mess, but I'm going to write about them trying to fix the mess. So, yeah, appreciate it, Chud. Appreciate it, as always, buddy. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.